Did you get a Silhouette Cameo either as a gift or for yourself and you still haven't taken it out of the box? How long's it been? A week? A month? A whole year? Well, believe it or not opening your Silhouette Cameo and using it is something that I've actually heard several people tell me before, that they're too scared to use their Cameo or they don't know what to do. So they never take it out of their box and they have this wonderful machine, this wonderful device that can make some really cool creative things, but they're too scared to use it. If that sounds like you, well, guess what? You're not alone. So stick with me through this video and I'll show you just how easy it is to get started and going with your Silhouette Cameo and your Silhouette Design Studio. So with that, let's get started.
Step 1. Take the Cameo out of the box.
So getting your Silhouette Cameo set up is pretty easy. As you can see, I just have it on this table here already plugged in. I'll be using a Bluetooth connection, so I don't have it hooked up directly to my computer. If you did, you just basically plug in your computer to your Cameo with the supplied cable that came with it. Now when you open it up, and again, this is a Silhouette Cameo 3, so your model may be different and looking than mine, but it is generally the same. When you open it up, you'll see that you have the roller bars, you have your carriage here. I just call it a carriage where you put your blades in. Mine has some holders here. I do also have this little tray here, which can hold some other things on the 3. And it has these little guide supports where it can help hold up your cutting mat, at least on mine. And then look at your particular cutting machine's manual to see what different features it may have. But in order to get this ready to go, you have to load in a blade. I have a couple of auto blades here, and I've got one ready to go. And if you take a look at your auto blade, you'll notice that it has these notches here. Okay, and then if you look on Silhouette Cameo on the send function, you'll see that there's a red circle and a blue circle. By default, this is your number 1 knife holder, if you will, the red circle one. And so in order to load your blades up properly, you can see here there are some notches as well to go into the auto blade right here. As far as I understand, the red circle side is the only one that can hold the auto blade. Has those double-edged notches there, and you got the double notches here. So what you'll want to do is you'll want to put this in. That way it can only go in one way. Put that in the notches and slide it in. You may have to turn it so that the notches go into those grooves. Make sure it's down all the way that it can. I like to hold this here just for a second. Push it down all the way in. Okay, but it's not locked in yet, so you notice this little tab here. Push it in until you get a good click. Just like that. Now it is in nice and solidly and it will not come out. Okay, so basically your Silhouette is now loaded with a blade and ready to go. You've got all your wires connected. Mine has the power button on the side here, so I'm going to go ahead and press the power button to turn it on. My menu turns on there on the side, and you can see that it's got it ready to go. I have a welcome screen with a load and unload, different functions up here, what you can do, but we're not going to get into that. So now my Silhouette is ready to go.
Step 2. Make sure you have the right computer.
One of the most common questions I see across different forums for using Silhouette Studio and your Silhouette Cameo is, what kind of computer do I need to get it to work? And then when I do see the responses across the different forums, I kind of cringe at some of the responses that are provided. So hopefully this will help clear it up. I'm here on Silhouette's support page, and we're going to talk about the minimum system requirements or minimum computer requirements that you're going to need in order to run Silhouette Studio, at least run it smoothly. Now these are minimum, and I will warn you right off the top, if you only meet the minimum system requirements, Silhouette Studio will run, but it will be excruciatingly slow. And so I'll make some recommendations as far as what I think you might want to get in order to have a better experience. But again, technically, Silhouette Studio will run if you meet these system requirements, these minimum system requirements. All right, so let's go ahead and get going. I just wanted to get that out of the way. And so the first question a lot of people ask is, will it work on my tablet? Or, hey, how come it doesn't work on this type of computer that I have? And it turns out that the computer they have is a Chromebook. A Chromebook it looks like a laptop, it acts like a laptop, but it is not a PC, Windows laptop, or a Mac laptop. It's a totally different operating system. And so that's, without getting technical into it, you cannot use a Chromebook. Also, as stated here directly by Silhouette, you cannot use a tablet or a mobile device, i.e. your phone, to run a Silhouette Studio. They just don't have that working in the full application suite here. And so what they do want you to use is a actual computer, and it could be a desktop or a laptop. And if you're going to be running a Windows system or PC, you might hear it referred to that. It'll have to run on Windows 10 and Windows 11. If you're anything lower than that, then you probably do need to upgrade. Windows 10 is a little bit older right now. Most modern computers are on Windows 11, but Windows 10 will still work. And then if you're on Mac or using Apple products, these are the operating systems that you want to be on. Of course, always update to your latest, not just because it's the latest, but also because it has the latest security patches to keep your information, your computer more secure. Okay, so basically the bottom line there is it has to be a actual PC or Mac, meaning not a Chromebook or a tablet. A desktop or a laptop will work running these operating systems depending on which route you are going, Apple or Windows. And when I say Windows, we're talking every other brand out there that you might have heard of. Dell, HP, Lenovo, all those types of brands, Acer, Asus, all those. So for RAM, which is a component of the computer, it stands for random access memory, the bare minimum is 4 gigabytes. And I'll tell you, 4 gigabytes was awesome in the year 2000. So 4 gigabytes now with most modern processors is barely enough to get by. I think entry-level computers that I've kind of scouted, they start at 8 gigabytes, and even 8 is kind of pushing it with everything that's out there today. So 4 gigabytes is the bare minimum that you'll need, but I will tell you, your computer will struggle. So processors, it talks about the speed of the processor, the number of cores or computer brains, if you will, that the computer will have. And a quad core means 4 cores, 4 processor cores within the main central processing unit. And so I will tell you that a quad core was also really awesome in the year 2000. Anymore now, most start at 6 cores or more for basic ones. Quad cores tend to be for lower entry-level cheaper budget type of computers. And if you see dual core, just forget it. It's not going to work. Dual cores anymore today, I'm not even sure why they exist. Now your storage memory, which is your hard drive, the amount of space that you could store on your computer, it will need at least 4 gigabytes. So if your computer only has 4 gigabytes, one, I would say that you really do need to upgrade your computer. But this is the amount of space it will take in total to run the program itself, the Silhouette Studio program. So most storage hard drives are significantly bigger. I think 128 gigabytes is the bare minimum for any modern computer today. In this case, the bigger the better, because that's just to run the program. You need 4 gigabytes just to run the program, but you're going to need extra space to store things like the pictures and the designs and everything else associated with the program and for your computer to work in general. Now your USB port, this is how you can plug in your Cameo via USB, and so you'll need at least one of those. Or you can do Bluetooth, and most computers do come with Bluetooth nowadays, and so make sure that you have at least Bluetooth 4. There are some Bluetooth 3 out there. Again, awesome in the year 2000, but not anymore. And then as far as getting the software itself, you are going to need some sort of internet connection, either hardwired with your Ethernet or Wi-Fi connected to your router. And so those are the bare system requirements that you would need in order to run Silhouette Studio, at least at the bare minimum.
Step 3. Download and install Silhouette Studio.
So now that you have a computer that will be able to run Silhouette Studio, or you've confirmed that your existing computer will run Silhouette Studio based off of the requirements, it's time to go ahead and download the program. Again, this is for brand new users, those that have not downloaded the program before, and if you have, you can also upgrade at the same page on their software page. As you can see, I'm at silhouetteamerica.com/software, and it'll bring you to this page here, where you have softwares, license keys, and machine firmware. Scroll down just a little bit, and you may have to expand it. You can look down for Silhouette Studio, and if you need to expand the options, and you'll see that there are 3 options here. You can download the Windows 64-bit for Windows PCs, the Mac version for Mac OS, as well as buying upgrades. And again, we're going to be downloading this brand new. And so since I am running a Windows PC, I'm going to hit the Windows 64-bit. So I'll highlight it, I'll click it. I'll notice that it'll tell me that it is now downloading a program. And then depending on which system you're using, you can actually automatically have it execute upon finishing the download. And so allow the program to download, and then if it doesn't automatically execute, you'll have to go into your files for your download, typically on your download folder, and double click the executable file so that it will start the installation process.
Step 4. Getting started with Silhouette Studio.
So now that you've got Silhouette Studio fully installed on your computer, go ahead and open it up, and it should bring you to this home screen or this main page screen of the program itself. Now, I'll just caveat right off the bat that I'm using Designer Edition, which is one step up from the Basic Edition, but for the most part, these will be pretty much the same. And so what is it we're looking at here? You see a lot of different things. You see this virtual cutting mat. You've got some menu or buttons stacked up on the left, some menus and buttons stacked up on the top and the top right. You got panels here and all these different buttons and menus on the right side. Now, I'm not going to go over everything, guys, because this is, again, just for a very first time basic beginners user, just to kind of get you started. As you get more practiced with these, you'll start to use more and more of these functions as you get more comfortable with Silhouette Studio. But let's just go over some main functions that I think that will be the most commonly used no matter what level you are, as far as, and no matter which version, whether you have Designer Edition or Pro or Basic, some basic functions that you will use for a lot of different projects, really. So let's start at the top left here. This is kind of your standardized file menus or drop-down menus. As you can see, a lot of programs look like this, and you have, if you drop it down, it drops down the menu and it shows you all the different things that fall within this menu. This first one file, for example, has things like save and open and create a new project. So very, very similar to other programs, something simple like even like a program like Word. Down here, these are just icons or buttons that replicate a lot of some of these functions here. You may see that this little piece of paper with a folded tab is basically making a new project. You see a new tab was opened up here, tab 1, tab 2. These are different projects and tabs that you can have going on. This is just open up a file, this is save, this is print, etc., etc. Here, these are basically some other functions for colors and then line borders as well for those, and we won't necessarily get into that too much here. On the left side here, the biggest thing you'll want to know for most beginner starter users is this button here, which keeps your cursor looking like a little arrow. It's a select function. These two here, this one you can draw lines with, and this one you can draw different shapes with. The next, this is your pencil or your free draw, so you can just draw your own things by hand. And then this right here is your text, so you can start typing in different things. So you can make things like vinyl decals of names or sayings, etc., etc. Now let's move over to this far right here. There's a panel here, and you got a bunch of icons or buttons on the right side. And what these buttons are over here are the selections for your different panel functions. Each of these has brings up one of these panels here or functions here that controls certain things. Like right now, we in this folded piece of paper looking button here, that's your page setup panel, and which is what is open right here. So if I click, let's say this text style panel, you see that it changes this, and it has everything that has to do with text. You can change the font, the size, the orientation, line spacing, character spacing, etc., etc. And so these basically just open up the different function type menus for the different things that that you can do within the program itself for what it is you need. Right in the middle is going to be your virtual cutting mat, or this is kind of basically your workspace, and it defaults to basically this view and size. This is your virtual cutting mat. This white area represents the area where you would put your vinyl in on the cutting mat, on your physical cutting mat. And then right now I have it set up that there's grid lines put on right now. Each dark black, or each black line, dark one, is a 1-inch block, and then you can see then it is broken up into quarters, and then even then 2 quarters within a quarters, or 16ths, if I got that right. And so that just helps you measure things. You can actually turn that off if you want to by going into this sub tab here, grid settings, and you can turn off show grid. That way it's a little bit easier to see your work. The grid is handy if you are trying to do measurements, or if you're trying to line up, say for example, some words, and you want to put on your virtual cutting mat that you're going to put physical vinyl on your physical cutting mat, so that you know where to place the vinyl on your cutting mat. All right, guys, and so just really quick in a nutshell, that's basically a quick overview of what it is you're looking at once you open up Silhouette Studio, and then you can see all these different menus.
Step 5. Making your first project.
So now that we've gone over the basic layout of Silhouette Studio, once you open it up for the very first time and kind of looked at what the different panels and functions are, let's go ahead and start with a very easy project to do as your very first project to help build your confidence and skill using Silhouette Studio as well as your Cameo. And so in my opinion, one of the easiest projects any new beginner can do with Silhouette Studio and Silhouette Cameo is to make a vinyl cut decal of a word or words. A lot of people like to do names or phrases. Let's just do a simple phrase like this that says dad wagon, and I'm making this into a decal that I'm going to put on my car. And so to do this, let's go ahead and get started. The first thing that I like to do is I like to clear off this grid area here, just so it's a little bit easier to see for now, because I do like to just work within the cutting mat area. Just personal preference, you can do it out here if you want. So to do that, in your page setup panel, if you haven't already done that, go to your page setup panel, make sure that's selected, and then this panel will turn on. Go to this grid settings and just turn off or uncheck the show the grid, and the grid goes away. And it just makes it easier if you're working in this area here to be able to see what's going on and what's happening. Alright, so the next thing to do, since we are going to be just typing out some text here, is I will go to my text style panel and open up that panel, and then you'll see a list of fonts in this menu here that pulls up a list of fonts that is on your computer already. And then these fonts are ones that came with the computer or ones that I have downloaded from off of the internet. And then you have a couple different types of things here, functions here. You can bold, indent, underline depending on the font. You can center, left justify, right justify, make it portrait or landscape, and then adjust the spacings of the lines between letterings and the space if you do like multi-lines of letters. So anyway, for this particular one, I selected a font called Army, and you can see it's right here. Now, if you're looking for a font that's not necessarily right there right away, this is my most recently used or frequently used, so that's why I was right up there. Let's just look for one. Let's call it like October or something. I think I have one that's kind of a fancy font. So October, if I start to type OC, you can see that down here it went to the O's. If I hit T, it'll look for right there, October Twilight, and it kind of pulls it up. So that's a quick way to find fonts that you have in there if you know the name of your font. So I want to go back to excuse me, I want to go back to Army. So I just type in Army, you can see it basically went to the AR and then M's and found Army right there. So I want to make sure that is selected. So my font for Army has now been selected. Now I'm going to go to the left side here and click my text function, and you can see, notice before when I had it on the select function, my cursor is an arrow. If I hit the text function, once I get back into the main windows, my cursor turns into what looks like a bracket. And so I'm just going to go into the white area here and click it once, and you'll see a blinking kind of bracket here with this circle and crosshair in it. And that's basically a text where you can start to type in text. And in this case, I'm going to type in dad wagon. Alright, so now you can see that it just quickly and easily made basically my decal, and for all intents and purposes, I'm practically done creating the design. I don't really want to modify this that much or anything to the like. So when you're making text, as long as it's like this with this green box around it that's with a blinking blue thing, you can still modify your text, or you can say like dad's wagon, etc., etc. As long as it's in that function, it is still modifiable as far as changing the text and letters that you want in your words. Okay, so now because I like to color in my decals or my graphic just so it's a little bit easier to see. And so if I know that this is my text that I want to be as my graphic, I'm just going to go ahead and I don't want to modify anymore by changing out any of the letters. I want to make it into an object, if you will, for cutting. And so the way to do that is I will do a right click and it brings up this menu here, and I'll convert it to a path. Okay, and so what this did is it created into a picture versus a text function. And so now you can see I can modify the sizes, things like that. I can stretch it, I can stretch it left to right, I can stretch it up and down, but I can't necessarily go back and change my font now because I've converted it basically into a picture. And I like to do this as my practice, just so once I know my text is correct, then I can start modifying this picture in different ways. And one of the ways I like to modify it is I know that I want to make my graphic at least 7 inches wide when I cut it. And you can see here, it shows you the actual width of your graphic, 6.078 inches in this case, and the actual height. But before we get to doing that, what I was going to do was go ahead and color this just so you can see it. So I go to open the fill panel, which brings up this color palette here, and I just like to do white. Make sure your object is selected, and I will hit, not white, black, because it's easy to see. Now all I've done is color the electronic graphic representation itself. I can make this purple, and whatever color that I put of vinyl that I'm going to cut is going to be the actual color of the decal itself. Just because I color it here does not mean that's going to be the color. If I put red vinyl on my mat and I still have my graphic as black, it will actually cut out a red dad wagon graphic because my vinyl itself is red. I'm not coloring, or we're not printing anything here that would be black or with red lines. We're cutting out from pre-colored vinyl that you're going to apply to your sheet. Okay, so now that we've made it so it's a little bit more visible, again, that's a personal preference. You can leave it hollow if you want to, like this. What I like to do then is, I know I want this to be 7 inches wide, and then I want it to be proportionally, I don't want it to stretch, so whatever 7 inches wide makes it, it'll grow this proportionally up and down to be able to make it look not stretched out. And so the way that I like to do that is, if I know my dimensions that I want, and the reason why I'm going to do this, I'll show you here in a minute, is for sizing on the mat itself, is you can look up here. Now that I've made this object, you see all these functions that have now appeared. And so what I'm going to do is, this is the width of it. Right now it's 6.078 inches, as you can see here and in here. I'm going to type in 7, and I'm going to hit enter. And you can see that it grew my graphic to just under 6 inches, 6.998. So it made it wider, but you can also see that it made it slightly taller to 0.882 inches. Whereas before, it was a little bit smaller at 0.766 inches. So I'm going to go back in here, hit 7 inches, and make it that width right there. Okay, and so now this is ready for cutting out. Now what I like to do is, I'll go back to my page setup, and at this point I will turn on my grid again to have all my lines. Now each of these dark lines on your grid is a 1-inch block, at least that's how it's set by default here. And then the lighter gray lines, you can see it divides the 1 inches into 4, so each of these smaller boxes here are a 1/4 inch square, and then the smaller boxes within each of that are 1/16 of an inch. Anyway, so this is important, where if you are on your physical cutting mat, this is a representation of your physical cutting mat. The gray area here with the arrow pointing up is your cutting mat in a virtual representation, and then this grid area will be the same grid area that's on your cutting mat. Now because I don't want to waste a whole sheet of 12 by 12 inch vinyl, I'm going to put a 2-inch by 8-inch piece of vinyl under. I want to make sure that my 7-inch wide by less than 1-inch wide graphic will fit in the space here. And so essentially I'm going to, let me just draw this here really quickly to help illustrate what I'm talking about. So I want to put a piece of black vinyl, because I'm going to cut this out in black, on my physical cutting mat in the top left corner. And you can see I've done this just a representative. Now pretend this is my physical cutting mat. I'm going to put this piece of vinyl right here, and I made it 2 inches tall by 8 inches wide. Okay, so that's my vinyl itself. Imagine this is your real cutting mat, and I'll show you here in a little bit what I'm talking about. I want to make sure that this dad wagon will be able to fit in that graphic area where I'm going to put my vinyl, so that's where it will cut. So that's why I turn on the grid so I can see that this is my 2 by 8 inch area, and my graphic fits well within it, and so that I know that my graphic will cut within the vinyl that I put on my sheet with a little bit of extra all the way around. Let me delete this out of here. Okay, and so now that is all set, and it's placed on my mat, virtual mat, where I'm going to put my physical vinyl on my physical mat will be, and I know that it's going to fit if I put a 2-inch by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8-inch piece of vinyl in the top left corner. The up arrow is the same orientation. Make sure you do that on your physical mat as well. So now that we're ready to go ahead over to send. Okay, and this is going to be where you will actually send your graphic or your image to your Cameo to go ahead and cut. And so I like to just highlight the item that I'm going to cut, And then since we are cutting, I will go ahead and select the cut function. Okay, and by default you should still be in this simple menu here. Don't worry about these for right now. This is your very first project and we're going to keep it really simple, really easy. So just highlight the object is what I like to do, select cut, and then on the right side here, and then the first, let me back up just a little bit. The first area is going to carriage 1, which is my left. If you look at your Cameo, it's there. You have two areas where you could put your blades. Your left one, which will have a red circle, and your right one, which will have a blue circle. Left one is where I'll be using, and so that's how you select which blade will be used, and make sure your blade is loaded into that carriage. And then from there, I've selected cut, and then now I'm going to pick the type of material that I'm going to cut. And I know that I'm going to be cutting on Oracal 651, which I recommend as just a beginner vinyl to use because it's cheap and it's easy to work with, it's easy to weed, and it's a pretty reliable and consistent vinyl. And so what I like to do in the latest update, I have found that when you click the drop down menu under here for the type of material, this is the material that you're going to be telling your machine you're going to be cutting on. You drop it down. If you go up to vinyl, you can see in this area here they actually have one where it's a preset for Oracal 651. So I'm going to click that. Okay, and then I want to make sure that my function is we're going to be cutting, and so that's what I'm putting right here. I'm going to be putting my auto blade in there. You might have a manual blade in your first carriage, but select which one you have. I'm using auto blade, which as a new beginner you're probably using as well. Down here are the settings of your blade, and you can see that with vinyl Silhouette Oracal 651 the settings have the blade depth at 1 with a force of 10. I'm going to do one pass, meaning it's only going to cut it once, it's not going to go over it a couple times, with a speed of 5. Okay, and so that's just the default settings here. You can change any of these as you want. Now I have found that if you are using Oracal 651, the stock settings work just fine. If you do not see vinyl Silhouette Oracal 651, the other default that's already built in is vinyl glossy. Okay, so you can select the vinyl glossy and look at the settings here. It's exactly the same. That blade depth of 1, a force of 10, one pass at a speed of 5. Alright, and so I have found that vinyl glossy, before they created a preset for Oracal 651, works just the same. Alright, and so now that we're ready to go, this is where we can now send this graphic to our Cameo. But first things first, we have to get our cutting mat and our vinyl set up, and then the cutting mat with our vinyl loaded into our Silhouette Cameo first.
Step 6. Loading up your Cameo.
So let's get our Silhouette cutting mat set up, our physical cutting mat that we're going to be putting the vinyl on and loading onto our Silhouette Cameo. You can see I have mine oriented here. Now this is a NiCapa mat, so it is aftermarket. If you have a Silhouette Cameo cutting mat, it'll probably have an arrow pointing up, and so that's where your orientation. I just have this hole at the top, which tells me this is the top, if you will, also just by the lettering as well. And so if you recall, I wanted to put set up my graphic so that it will cut up in the top left corner here within, and it's an inch by about 7 inches wide, so it's going to fit in here. And I was going to put my vinyl right here in this 2-inch by 8-inch spot. As you can see, I've got a chunk of vinyl here that's already pre-cut that I've sized to 2 inches by 8 inches. Really, you can make it bigger, but to not waste the vinyl and put a whole lot of extra here, I've gone ahead and done this. And so basically, you'll want to set this up exactly how you had it set up, or are going to set it up, or at least put it in the area where you're going to place or have your vinyl cut out on your Cameo. And so as you can see, I put my black vinyl here. I'm using black Oracal 651 vinyl in the top left corner of my physical cutting mat, because I'm going to cut out the dad wagon graphic in this section here as was set up on my virtual cutting mat. And so once I have that on my cutting mat, you can either press it down with your finger, just make sure it's on really nice and solidly and smoothly, or you can use something like a squeegee. This is just a generic squeegee with a felt buffer on it to help smooth everything down onto your cutting mat. And so now that we have our cutting mat set and ready to go, let's get it loaded up in our Cameo. So now that we have our cutting mat loaded with our vinyl. Let's get it loaded into our Silhouette Cameo. And so here, this is the Silhouette Cameo 3. You may have a different model. I know they're on the Silhouette Cameo, I believe 5 now as of the making of this video, but generally speaking, they're all about the same as far as loading it up. And so you can see here that I have my cutting mat oriented where this would be the arrow pointing up if you had the Silhouette brand cutting mat. And I know this is not that, this is NICAPA, so this is my up arrow. And you feed it in this way. You can see this guideline here on the left side that I have here, and that's basically put the left edge of your cutting mat up against that, just like so, and you push it up so that you have even pressure against the wheels on your Cameo. And so you can see that by aligning here, the edge of this area here is just on the inside of this wheel, and it's on the edge of that side there on the right side as well. Once you've got it there, just hit your load button depending on which model you have. And you can see that in doing so, it just sucked in my cutting mat, and now this is fully loaded and ready to go for cutting. So the next step after that would be to go back to Silhouette Design Studio and hit the send function to send the graphic to your Cameo so that it will start cutting. So now that we have our cutting mat loaded into our Cameo and confirmed everything's lined up properly, go ahead and hit the send button and it will send the file to your Cameo so that it will start cutting. So I've hit send in Silhouette Studio, and as you can see, my Cameo started activating and working. Right now what it's doing is it's setting its blade depth to the depth that was set in the settings on Silhouette Design Studio. And so now it's going to go ahead and start cutting, and it will do its thing. When it is all said and done, on the menu it will say unload. Basically your Cameo will run through the whole process. It'll bring it back to its original starting position and then stop, and where you see the word pause, it'll change to unload, and that's how you'll know for sure that it is actually done. Even when it is done though, I would just wait a couple more seconds to make sure that the computer hasn't told it to pause just for a minute so it can buffer and add some more instructions to your Cameo, and then it starts up again, because that has actually happened to me before. So just make sure that before you unload your Cameo that it is truly and indeed actually done with cutting out the graphic. Now that our Cameo has finished cutting, simply unload your mat by hitting the unload button. And there you go. You can kind of maybe see that it has the score marks of the actual vinyl that's been cut. And so the next thing to do after this is to go ahead and weed out the excess vinyl from the vinyl sheet.
Step 7. Weeding out your decal.
So now that our vinyl is all cut out, it's time to go ahead and weed off the excess to reveal our actual graphic that was cut out by our Cameo. So first things first, let's peel this off. I like to just go ahead and peel it off of my cutting mat, just like that. Super simple. And again, 651 is really easy to work with. It weeds really nicely and real easily. And so basically for something small and simple like this, without any kind of areas that I actually have to pick out to weed out, which I'll show you in a different example after this, I just simply will pick up a corner as best I can and carefully start to lift away, peel off the vinyl from the excess vinyl from my graphic. And as you can see, it's revealing the graphic as I peel it away. And this one's fairly easy because I don't have any sections that I have to dig out in between letters, like let's say this A, if that was connected, these areas were connected, I'd have to pick out that little triangle. I'll show you what I mean here in just a second here. Or even this O, if that was connected, I would have to dig out that little circle, the little chunk inside the O. Alright, and so here, this was super fast, super easy. Like I said, this was a really easy project to do. Making this dad wagon decal already weeded out without any issues. But let's say you did pick a font that did have to be what's known as weeded out in between. As you can see, hopefully here in the A and the G, I did dad wagon in a different font here. Let me weed this out real quickly here so you can see what I'm referring to. So if I peel this apart, just like I did in the previous decal here, there are a couple areas, particularly within the A, the D, the A, the G, and the O, that have to be taken out. This one didn't have that because all the letters had openings, so all the excess vinyl was still in one piece for all intents and purposes, and all peeled out with the same thing. Now, to get these out, my preferred tool is to just use a X-Acto knife with a brand new blade so that your tip is nice and sharp and pointy. And what I like to do is I'll take the tip, and so let's start with this A in the dad part. I'll kind of just poke into the vinyl just a little bit and then kind of twist to lift it up, and you could see that I got the little chunk of vinyl out of there. Now be careful, X-Acto knives, if you don't know, are super sharp. They're basically razors, so be careful when you're using this. So I'll just do that for this D here real quick. Sometimes you might not get it right away, so just take your time, and if it falls just like that, just take your time and kind of just carefully pick and lift it up, just like that. Alright, so let's finish off this particular decal as well for the other parts, and you can notice I'm just sticking it on my finger here, the parts that I picked off, just like that. It's super simple, super easy, so just like that. And it takes just a little bit of practice. You may have to get used to it. If you're not comfortable using a knife like this, you could use something with a sharp pointy tip so you can dig it out. I know I've seen people have used like dental hooks or implements to do that. And so that's how you can weed out sections that actually still have areas that need to be picked out after you've weeded out all the other vinyl around it. So now that we have our decal all weeded out, it's time to add some transfer tape so that it's ready for application on whatever surface you're going to put it.
Step 8. Applying transfer tape.
So let's add some transfer tape to our decal so that it's ready to apply. Now if your graphic is bending like this naturally, it makes it a little bit difficult to put the transfer tape on because it could grab an areas earlier, like the high points, than the low points beforehand, and it could mess this up. So if possible, try to flatten this out as best as you can. Right, so if it's bending like this, sometimes I'll just straighten it out and then kind of bend this way opposite of this bend. And sometimes that takes care of that. In this case, it does. So now that it's flat, it'll be easier to apply my transfer tape. But if it doesn't, I might recommend taking just a little bit of masking tape, something that peels off easy later on, and just kind of put it together in a roll so that it's essentially double-sided. And then put a piece on the back here, make another one, make it into a roll so it's essentially double-sided, put it on the back there as well, straighten it out, and then put it down on whatever surface you're working on and tack it down fairly lightly, and now you can see it's nice and flat. Alright, so the next step then is go ahead and cut a piece of transfer tape that's going to be big enough to cover your entire decal with a little bit of excess. As you can see, I've got one piece here. This is a little bit too much, but that's just because my default size was 12 inches wide. So I just like to, for something like this, just kind of line it up to make sure that the transfer tape is going to cover it. I have it kind of taut right now. I'll loosely let it drop down so that there's a U, like a slight U shape in the middle, and then drop that and let it touch the middle as I try to line everything up so that it's parallel to the graphic itself. Hit that middle and then just let the sides kind of roll down just like that. Alright, so now that's on, it's nice and smooth. Then you take a squeegee or credit card or whatever you want to just basically get the transfer tape on your graphic nice and firmly. Just like that. Maybe do something like this to make sure that it is on your graphic really well. Next thing's just basically pick this up next because you don't want all of this excess here. So just be careful doing that. And the reason I use masking tape is because it doesn't stick super hard. Now the transfer tape the excess was sticking to the table. Go ahead and get rid of these since we don't need these anymore. Like that. Now I have a lot of excess transfer tape all over here, so just get some scissors or a knife and cut this off. Just like this. Cut that off there. Cut that guy off of there. And we'll cut this off of here. And this is partly why I like to cut on a chunk of vinyl that's bigger all the way around, than a little bit bigger all the way around, so I have space to be able to cut around it and have it ready to go. And now this decal is ready to go for application. What you would do is you would peel this off, and as you can see, the transfer tape is lifting up the graphic, and then you would put the graphic down onto whatever it is you're going to apply. Alright guys, you made it to the end of the video. Thanks for sticking with it through my tutorial, and hopefully I've shown you just how easy it is to go ahead and get started using your Silhouette Cameo and Silhouette Studio, so you can break that Cameo out of the box it's been sitting in for the last days or weeks or months or years even, and that you can start creating and making using your Silhouette Cameo. Also wanted to take a moment to give a shout out to a new channel on YouTube called The Legend of Gaming. I'll post a link in the description down below so you can go ahead and check them out. If this tutorial was helpful for you, be sure to give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button and the bell notification button so you get notices when I post new content to the channel. I also have other content on the channel that will show you how to use the Silhouette Cameo to do other things like making other types of vinyl cut decals, like layered ones, decals of images, and even things like print and cut stickers at home that you can use using your Silhouette Cameo as well. Alright guys, thanks again for watching. I truly do appreciate all of your support, and we'll see you next time in the next video.